I'm excited. I have got Professor Niklas Myhr with me this evening, with all of us this evening to answer your social media, your business, your marketing questions. Professor Myhr is a social media, digital, and global marketing professor at Chapman University. Check this out, you guys. He is one of the advisors to Prince Albert II of Monaco when it comes to digital strategy. I mean, you guys, how much more do we need tonight? Who else do you need to answer your questions but Professor Niklas Myhr? Professor Myhr, it's good to see you this evening. How are you doing, my friend?
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for the invite. Always good chatting and catching up with you. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I want to encourage everyone, if you guys have questions, whether you're watching this on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Periscope, or any place else in between, ask your questions. I will get to them during tonight's conversation. Please hit the share button. Share this out with all your family, with all your friends. And, you know, Professor Myhr, there's a lot of things going on in the world right now. And I know you and I have talked about COVID-19 and online education and everything else. And what I want to do, though, tonight is I want to kind of switch hats and just focus on the business and marketing side of things, because I think people need to try to stay positive, right? One of the things on social media that I've heard you talk about in your classes, I've heard you speak from the TEDx stages internationally, is the importance of having some level of visibility on social media. Talk to us about what we can do right now in a COVID-19 world to remain relevant and visible on social media.
Well, I couldn't agree more that visibility still is important, even though during this time of pandemic and the social justice and all things going on in the world, it has also been a good idea to press the pause button if you haven't thought it through and don't do necessarily your regular programming, but still staying quiet and disappearing is also not a good option. There used to be this dating advice. I don't know if it ever worked. Try to pretend to be hard to get. And I never tried it. But when it comes to the effectiveness online, I doubt it's going to be very effective given all the noise out there and all the opportunities to get lost in the weeds if you simply don't participate. Because maybe today there's somebody looking for somebody like you, and why not be present?
Can we, and once again, everyone, Professor Niklas Myhr brings to all of us an international perspective of social media and digital. And that's one of the things that has just fascinated me about Professor Myhr from day one. So talking about being visible, being relevant, creating content, is it possible for us to be creating too much good content right now? Or should most of us as individuals, most of us as business owners, should we be creating more good content?
Well, first of all, good content is always better than bad content. But if there comes to this trade-off between quality and quantity, I believe that there is some truth to the principle that the practice makes perfect. And there's been this study of a professor sending out half the class to take one good photograph and submit as their term paper, and the other class half got credit for the quantity of pictures. And guess who got the better pictures done? The ones who practiced, the ones who did many. And I believe that frequency is of course relative on the platform and your target market, etc. But when it comes to internationally, it's true that I've noticed that the patience for bombarding people too frequently might be slightly less in Sweden, for example, where I'm from, and I might be conscientious about that. At the same time as going too far, I think on average, the average user on social media is overcompensating and staying on the low frequency side of the spectrum as opposed to doing it too often. Hi, Daniel. How are you?
Hey, Daniel from Toronto, Canada. It's good to see you. Everyone, please follow Daniel on social media. I love what he's doing. Yeah. And, you know, Daniel's a very likable human being. One of the things that's connected me with Dan out of Toronto is his likability on social media. Mm-hmm. Professor Myhr, when you and I first met, you may not remember this, but we met at a presentation at LinkedOC with CC Chapman, I believe, as a presenter. And I was down there with my daughter, AJ. We ran into each other. We hit it off. One of the reasons I've stayed in touch with you offline and online over the years is because of your likability factor. Talk to us a little, and you know that. I've told you that before. So talk to us about being likable on social media. What are some tips? What are some skills that we can bring to the table on social media to be more likable, especially for all the lawyers out there?
Well, I don't know if I have the perfect example, but some of the principles I've seen working and that I try to practice myself is to not be selectively nice. Don't be too strategic, even though I teach strategy as part of my social media and digital marketing classes. Don't be too strategic when it comes to who to spend time with. It used to be something called Cloud Score that you remember from that time when we met C.C. Chapman and etc. And people were measured on a scale from 1 to 100 in terms of their influence. Of course, there are other tools today, and people are making assessments based on number of followers, engagement, etc. Don't be too strategic about it, because there might very well be an influencer that sees you treat somebody that is not worthy of your attention in a very negative manner, and that might backfire on you. Taking you, for example, I remember that occasion very well, and you might have liked my presence there because I wasn't sucking up to you that was sort of a high-powered lawyer. I was talking to your daughter.
Nobody sucks up to me. Just so you know, Professor Myhr, hey, I was there with my daughter, right? I mean,
yeah, and I try to talk to everybody, because selectively nice are those people that my hope is that social media is going to help promote people that are good to everybody. It doesn't mean that you have to give up a whole day with them or whatever, but that you're basically genuinely good and not selective and just picking people and battles all the time and being too, you're erring on the side of a scarcity mindset as opposed to being generous.
Do you think too many people spend too much time on working to be likable as opposed to being real, being transparent, and being themselves? For example, you've seen my positions on huge, important, current social issues. And for me, I feel like it's really important to share my thoughts, my opinions, the facts as I understand them, which is going to probably upset half of my following. And I don't really care, because I want to be myself. I want to So having said that, how do we balance being transparent, being trustworthy with being likable in current trending issues? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I always tell my students that there is no one template to follow, because it all stems from what is right for you. I always tell them, even though I'm going to use myself as some examples to get things going before you begin to feel comfortable in class to share your story and your forks in the road and your experimentation of various platforms. That doesn't mean that I am sort of the perfect model. You can poke holes on my social presence all day, but you have to think about the small things and take the battles that you want to pick, the battles that you are comfortable with. Strategic, I talked about before. I think it makes sense to be strategically transparent, that you're conscious about things that you're open about and things that you choose to hold closer to your vest. And I know that the things you're doing is probably going to alienate some, but you might even get more affection from people that agree with you, the way you present yourself and the frequency, etc. So you have to feel what is right for you in your situation and whatever battles that you choose to undertake. But I think it's the small signals you send also on a regular basis. It's not just the big battles. What are the things that you concern yourself with, and where is your attention going?
What do you have a thought or opinion as to what's more important, offending someone or being real, genuine, and credible in the content that you're sharing?
Well, I'm not running for president, and I know that going negative seems to be a popular strategy, and it might be effective. I don't have the stats in terms of what's going to work for a so-called personal brand for career development, but I think that many employers are saying basically that employers I've been speaking to is like saying that if you're going on frequent rants and are aggressive in your tonality and you're basically having a negative voice that you are sharing the world, they're less likely to hire you. Some employers might say so. On the other hand, if you are negative or reacting strongly on things that really matter for you, maybe you don't want to work for people or companies that don't think that's okay. And that might be a good thing for you, that they screen themselves out from hiring you, so you don't have to go there and discover it.
So you've just raised several questions in my mind. Like, do you mind if I ask you a couple of follow-up questions that we haven't talked about? And, I love AJ Richmond, who's a gifted lawyer out of Georgia. He says, for those of you listening to the podcast next week and not watching the live video, I may not like your stance on issues, but I like you, #respect, which raises the issue about one of the things I try to do, Professor Myhr, is I try to be tough on issues and kind to people. In other words, when you talk about negative social media posts, I look at the post I'm sharing as being factual and simply sharing information as opposed to being negative about an issue or subject matter. But the reason I wanted to bring AJ's post up is it's a good reminder for however transparent we want to be in business and life on trending political or social issues, to be kind to people and tough on issues. And I think that's how you can keep the relationships. Does that vary from from how we use social media here in the United States to what you've seen and how social media is used around the world? You've been around the world, you've watched other businesses located in other venues use social media to build their brands, to share their messages. Are there any major differences with how we do things here in the United States and how people are using social media in other places around the world?
Yes, a short answer. And without trying to claim that I can stereotype the rest of the world in one fell swoop, it is still true that some cultures are more high context in nature, that they don't necessarily look at only what you say, but also how you say it, and the body language, or the digital body language, as I call it, and what kind of messages are you sending? Where is your attention? Where is your tonality? What is your commitment in terms of not just the exact words, but how you say it. And US is on the lower half of that spectrum, meaning that what we say is what people believe that we mean, but not quite as much as Scandinavia, where I'm from, or Germany, or the Netherlands, where it really is a low context culture that is ruling, meaning that what you say and write is usually what people think that you mean, and you have to sort of look at it without as many signals around it. I'm not saying that those are unimportant, but if you look at Far East Asia or Middle East, for example, these contextual cues matters a lot. And I think that in addition to that, you have to look at some biases in terms of courtesy bias. Like in Japan, for example, if you have a survey, how much do you like this product or service? If they have 4.5 on a scale to 5, that might be bad. Whereas in America, they might use the spectrum more, but people
Really
don't offend people. And when I went to Japan and studied their business culture without being an expert, I just knew and learned from people with more experience than me that yes may mean yes, but it also may mean yes, we're going to think about this, and you will never hear no. So sort of they don't want to say it in your face. And in America, they might call it passive aggressive. They're not doing anything. They said yes, or they looked happy, but they might not tell you to the face, and it's very unlikely that they're going to tell you very bluntly on social media as well. Just go away.
Interesting. So I know you travel with students. You'll take your certain classes. I think you've been to Prague. You've been to either, I think, Japan, Scandinavia. What's been their feedback with what they didn't expect? What was the biggest unexpected experience that they had when it came to, doing business in these other countries and then translating that onto the social media platforms?
When it comes to Scandinavia, is the place where I've gone 9 times, and it's been called Business in Scandinavia. We go to Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Finland. And one of the surprises my students have discovered was that they discovered that even inside Scandinavia there are cultural differences, and they thought it was just one small country or group of countries that everyone got along. But of course, you have diversity inside each country as well. But even the cross-cultural differences between those countries, that they picked up signals that I have not even thought about. And
really?
some of those things were outside realm of social media, but some of that was just cross-cultural. That, for example, Swedes are very much consensus decision making, want to have everyone involved and get feedback, and people want to get along. Whereas and then once you decide something, you're gonna go with it. But the Danes, they might say yeah, but then they might change their mind, and then you have different philosophies, and some of that is fascinating to see from the eyes of my students, living vicariously through them when they undergo these experiences. When it comes to social media, they have been astonished to see that. They find Wi-Fi everywhere. Everyone is online, and everyone is sort of fluent with the technologies and very up to date with what is going on with most of the technologies we see here in the US, where people are, of course, largely embracing these technologies, but the percentage of frequent users at a high broadband connection has been there for a long time. And that's why we got a lot of tech companies now in Scandinavia, because it's been a big focus to build up the broadband connection for everybody.
Speaking of your students, one of my takeaways with having the pleasure of guest lecturing in some of your courses over the years is the feedback from the students as to what social media platforms they're using right now, and what social media platforms they're not even active on. I'm always surprised when I leave your classroom. Can you share with our viewers, over the last, let's just say 2 years, what are the most popular social media platforms that your students, by the way, maybe share with us the demographics or the ages of your students, the range, so we can give some context to what you're going to say. But what platforms are they using right now, and what platforms are they not using?
Almost everybody in the business school at Chapman University uses LinkedIn because they're told during the orientation week, or most of them had an account before, or at least the MBA students, and then they take classes such as mine, where I make it sort of a big focus, because it's sort of a hygiene standard for a business student that wants to have a professional career to at least be present there. But briefly on LinkedIn, some, of course, look at it, just dump their resume and go and have fun elsewhere. And I try to remind them that's just a starting point. Now you can build a presence, share content, build relationships, etc. But the other networks, Facebook, almost everyone grudgingly has a Facebook account to access fraternity or sport team Facebook groups and other activities that they're dependent on, or because they want to have some connection with friends and family, but they're not going there enthusiastically on the regular news feed as much as they used to, back in the days. Instagram is super big. Almost everyone is there and very active, spend a lot of time. And sometimes I have somebody in my class that is like sharing. Yeah, I got offered X number of $1,000 to show a product on my Instagram feed, and some of them are influencers and can share some tips and tricks. And I always try to leverage those experiences because they probably know more about things that I don't know about. And then we have TikTok, of course, that has taken off in the last 2 years dramatically. And not everyone is there, but a lot of students are spending time there and having fun. Twitter was something that I used to tell students to go and do some exercises on, like back in the days. But after a while, it became like pulling teeth. It was like, should I really force the students to go on Twitter if they really hate it? Because all of them said, "Oh, I hate Twitter. It's too much information overload." And it's like, and I just stopped. After a while, I just felt it was an uphill battle. But then I realized that I'm doing them a disservice. So I started picking it back again, because Twitter is not going away. It's surprisingly resilient, even though it's not been leveraged as much as people think they could have in terms of monetization against the giants. But when it comes to Twitter, I see some uptick there with students. Plus, I tell those that are going into a digital marketing job at an agency or consultancy, wouldn't it make sense for you to be able to access the direct line to the CEO of that company because they're on Twitter? Or if you want to work in media, they're on Twitter. And if you want to work somewhere else, doesn't it make sense to be there if they scout you out? And are you really going to be a digital marketer without being present on one of the still major networks? And just have an account to see what's going on, to be fluent so you can help others, even though you're not helping yourself much yet.
It's interesting to hear the feedback from the millennial students. And by the way, everyone, we're speaking with Professor Niklas Myhr, social media, digital, and global marketing professor at Chapman University. Look at this. Look at this setup that Professor Myhr has right here. I just love this. I also know that you have some MBA classes. So you've got some evening classes where you've got seasoned business professionals. I love that shot. You don't have, you share what you want. That's awesome. I love that setup. But with respect to your more seasoned, older MBA students who have companies, I've met some of them. Some of them are very successful. They just want to learn digital and social. They want to expand their brand and their company's products and services around the world. Are they also avoiding Twitter, or do they have the same social media platform usage habits as your younger millennial students, or do you see a difference there?
I think that the more mature students, they are taking LinkedIn more seriously, primarily. They are more active in terms of updating things and commenting. And I think that Twitter, I see some are using that for their startups, of course. If I have some entrepreneurial students that realize that they can actually access also venture capitalists, why not? And to actually use that for more than just marketing to consumers. I tell them that use the tools at your disposals, not just staring at people that are going to hire you or buy from you, but also other stakeholders and friends and family and mentors and investors that you need to stay connected with. And just like you do with your clients, you ask them, how would you like me to communicate with you, as one of your first questions of your clients. I suggest the same thing to my students, that they keep track of who are my fax acquaintances, my phone acquaintances, my coffee table acquaintances, or how do I stay connected with people? Of course, you can have multiple modes and meet face-to-face when you can, when it's safe again. But then what are the social tools that they have as a preference? And don't forget about those people important in your life just because they're not present on any of your favorite networks. That's a very arrogant attitude to use what is convenient for you as opposed to what is convenient for other people.
Well, I like that. That is so important. That's such a great reminder. I'm guilty of that sometimes. And, I'm looking at some of the comments, Professor Myhr, over on the side, which I want to get to the questions and the comments. They're not all appearing on the admin screen that you may see. I've got others coming in, I think, from Periscope. And I love Twitter. I mean, Twitter to me is a fire hose to the world. And it also allows you to almost be able to connect with anybody whether it's a private direct message or using a hashtag or jumping into a conversation, I found it to be it's probably still my favorite platform, but, and I'm just responding to some of the questions over here, but let me just kind of reset for a moment for those joining live or recorded a little bit late. We're speaking with Professor Niklas Myhr, a social media digital marketing expert out of Chapman University, TEDx international speaker on the advisory council for Prince Albert II of Monaco. And we've talked about creating content that allows you to become visible on social media, likable on social media, credible on social media. Towards the end of tonight's show, you guys, we're going to talk about how to build and maintain a global social media network. So we're working our way to that. But one of the things that I really like, in fact, let me just say one of the things I really love is how you emphasize to your students, how you emphasize in your work that it's okay to create content to allow people to fall in love with you from a business perspective, right? On social media. What do you mean by that?
Well, first of all, it's not for everybody. You are not for everybody. But if you have some people that become really enthusiastic about what you do, treat them with the respect that they deserve, and recognize people that go out of the way to share your content and your presence and your word of mouth about you. And even if they are not buying from you necessarily, but keep track of people that maybe are asking for some deeper levels of engagement. And for some, with a lot of people like that, they may not be able to do that one-on-one all the time, but at least have some kind of filter where you recognize when they tweeted, when they did X, Y, or Z, that you recognize that they went out of the way to help you. And sometimes when you have the bandwidth, call them, pick up the phone, or just chat with them. And
now that's crazy talk right there. That's crazy talk. You mean stop and take the time to pick up one of these and call somebody?
Yeah, some youth find that very parental, like parents do things.
But
like
it's
that.
great advice. That's great advice.
But when it comes to like keeping track of people, most business people know what a CRM system is, customer relationship management system. But the corresponding thing for a personal brand is to have a personal relationship management system, a PRM, where you may sell to some people sometimes, but you keep track of all these other people in your life that are maybe one day is going to help you the day comes when you launch a company, when you raise money, when you want to raise money for a charity, when you want to be voted for office, whatever. Have you stayed connected with them? Not just what mode of communication they prefer, but the frequency. How often do you want to stay connected with them, and not just with a templated email, but are you having some way to make sure you don't forget about them, and not stalking them? Find the frequency that works for them.
That's, to me, what you just shared is one of the most important things about building a business, about building relationships, about social media. It's after the post. It's after I post or you post. It's what do we do with it? The engagement, the interaction, those private messages. Hey, Professor Myhr, great tip. It's not capitalized. There's no period at the end of the sentence, but it's just a quick high five, letting someone else know that you're paying attention, you're sharing, and that you're noticing and you're caring. And I think that goes a long ways on social media, but a lot of people don't do that.
No, but I think it is a question of just the mere fact that you called says more than the actual words in the conversation. I'm not saying that it should just be baloney, but just showing that you cared and thought about them. And it could be simpler than that. Some people think it is ridiculous that people on Facebook, when they have a birthday, that people just write a sloppy 2-second congrats and didn't take them more than 2 seconds. But having been on the receiving end of such a love storm, just the fact that people paid 2 seconds attention to me is enough for some cases. And I appreciate the people that have some more depth in the communication, and you might pick it up from there. But it's like sometimes it's the small things, it's the small drips of communications that actually build up to a larger picture.
And by planting these seeds and by building these relationships, like you alluded to, at some point in time in the future, if you're if you have a startup and you're looking for venture capital, or if you're bringing out a new book and you're looking for people to help share that new book with the world, it's amazing how many years later on social media, planting these seeds and slowly cultivating, our crops, it's amazing how it pays back tenfold. Not that that's why we're doing it, but one of the things I love about social media and business is that's a reality that happens on social media. And when I was building our law firm before the internet, before social media, that didn't happen. Like you and I, we'd have to meet at a restaurant and have dinner, and that's great, but it's a one-on-one. It's not a 1 to 1,000. And it just took longer to build things out than it does today. And I love the fact that you did highlight, and you do highlight with your students, be visible, be likable, be credible. Under certain circumstances, be lovable, be that person that people want to share and talk about or help when you need help.
And one thing to add to that is that I try to direct my students to the old blog post by Kevin Kelly, the founder of Wired magazine, the first editor of Wired magazine, and his famous blog post is called 1,000 True Fans, your 1,000 True Fans. And it sort of opens the eyes of students that are steeped in this mentality that you have to basically become a million follower influencer to be meaningful, and they live close to Hollywood at Chapman University, and they see this from Chapman University. The Duffer Brothers went there, film school, and they created Stranger Things, and you're going to go for basically the Super Bowl. But there's most 99% of professionals can have great careers with just 1,000 true fans. Well, in the example of creators, you don't necessarily need more than 1,000 true fans. I'm not saying it's easy to get 1,000 true fans the way Kevin Kelly defines it, but it's not millions. And therefore, it's extra important to not forsake those true fans in your chase of these millions, because people with many more followers than I have almost in unison are reporting that when they tweet something, they don't get like people jumping on board to buy immediately. And people are surprised to hear that people with this super celebrity, they thought they could just tweet and they would automatically sell any new product they put up there. And it's simply not true. They might have some true fans that don't forget them in the chase of new. So it's a balance. Of course, you need to have lead generation mechanism, marketing automation, and automating things, but this human touch is so important, especially for the best customers, the most loyal customers. And
So let me ask you a question. So with the article that you share with your students, you and I both know it's quantity. I mean, it's quality, not quantity, right? It's the quality of our relationships. And the article that you shared, if for business owners today, gosh, I love that view. Look at that setup, you guys. That is slick. That's the social media professor right there. My question is, for people that now understand the importance, of building out a community on social media, especially now in a COVID-19 world, as Dan points out in his comment that I just put on the screen for those of you listening in the podcast version, how can they start in today's world with that first of 1,000? What are the things they can do to start building up that first 1,000 of quality members, followers, or community members, on any particular social media platform? How do we start?
One thing is to basically don't leave it to chance. I advise my students to begin small and identify maybe, if not 100, maybe take 10 people that really matter to you, that you really want to stay connected with. It might be a mentor, it might be a former boss, it might be somebody that you want to work for in the future, but also peers and colleagues and friends that you want to have a long-term relationship with. some of them may not yet have shared love with you, but it might be because you never shared any love with them. So the best way to get is to basically give. And I usually say that don't think, since I became an American citizen, don't look at what your social network can do for you, but think about what you can do for your social network. Is the presidential quote? Yeah, almost.
I like that. I like that. That's like the Bob Burg mentality, right?
Yes, of course. These are not new for things that follow you and your attitude, because you practice it, Mitch. But I can see how a lot of people coming into social media sees that as wow, it's a free tool to reach millions of people, and it's going to give me sales and customers. Well, it gives you that if you put something into it, and you need to fuel your social presence with your value, your engagement, your giving of your love to the network, and it might pay you back.
Speaking of networks, I want to talk about starting and building a global, so not just the United States, but taking other areas around the world into consideration, their trends, their tendencies, their likes, their dislikes. Let's pivot a little bit and talk about building a global social media network. And I know it's small steps and it takes time, but it's something that you and I, we talked about. Let's discuss this tonight, because right now we're doing business with other people and other companies all around the world. One of the things I absolutely loved when I first spoke with you, and you contributed a chapter in my book on this, was recognizing the different time zones that we're all living in. So if I post something to Twitter right now, on the other side of the world, whoever had a chance to look at that tweet for 10 seconds, they're sleeping, right? And you reminded me about keeping in mind all the time zones and the differences in physical gestures, and what the peace sign in America may mean in a different side of the world. Oh, look at this right here. See, you're building social currency with me, Professor Myhr. I'll do anything in the world for you. What a great book. And by the way, thank you for contributing your chapter in my book. But we want to build a global social media platform. We want to start building out our global business or personal brand. Where do we start? What do we need to take into consideration, and especially in a COVID-19 world?
Well, I think that everyone has to look for diversity, not just this year when it's been a hot topic, but a few years ago, a former MBA student of mine, she nominated me for their global corporation to speak to their 2,500 global corporation on the topic of diversity and inclusion. And I was like dumbfounded. It's like, look at me. It's like I'm not sort of the one typically picked for this topic. But one thing she had picked up during our Business in Scandinavia travel was that she had appreciated that I was seeking out diversity in terms of different types of companies to engage with different people, different roles, and introducing people across boundaries at social events as well. And I think that has played well for me, given that I'm a curious person, that I've been driven to explore different cultures, not just as a tourist, but also work-wise, and try to seek out opportunities. So some of that is upon you to experience diversity, not just with the tourist sites, but also with the people, conversations. But to systematize that, I have two tips for you. One is to use a scheduling tool like Calendly, for example, that I use, and schedule times that you're available for conversations, and don't just put them 9 to 5 your time zone. So I usually make available time slots that are convenient for people coming to the office in Central Europe at 9 a.m., which means midnight here. It's not convenient, no, but being a global citizen is not by definition going to be convenient. But you just have to adapt your life if you want to have a global network. And sometimes that means getting up early. had some appointments at 6 a.m. or even I've had some presentations that took place at 4 a.m. My time in order for me to deliver it virtually overseas. So that is one time. It's carve out time in your calendar when it's convenient for people in other time zones to engage in a Zoom call, run a webinar targeting at them, or do something else. Just post on social media. Of course, you can pre-schedule and get around that in other ways and think about it that way to spread out your tweets or whatever to be coming out at the regular interval that is convenient for others as well. The other tip is to find at least a few people on different continents that you have some kind of monthly contact with. I'm part of a couple of masterminds for professional speakers that I met via professional speakers associations, one with national speakers associations where we're like 7 US-based speakers that meet via Zoom monthly to share experiences and get feedback. But I'm also part of a global mastermind. You have to jump on opportunities. Like a year ago, I was playing golf here in California with a German speaker friend of mine, and he said, by the way, I have a ticket to the Asia Professional Speakers Association's conference in Singapore next month, and I can't go. Would you like my ticket? And for most people, they would just find it ridiculous, like a question, go to Singapore next month. And of course, now in COVID times, it's a different story. But it's like, I jumped on it. I actually figured out I could find an affordable ticket, and it worked out in my calendar. And I went there and developed a network over there. And since then, I'm engaged in a wonderful mastermind with people popping in from Australia, from Thailand, from Singapore, from Germany or Italy, and just me and the California. And I get a very different view. Sometimes I ask the same question to that mastermind as to the US-based one and get different answers, and I just have to process it and make what is right for me, of course. But it's very helpful to broaden your mind.
You just shared 2 tips that I actually just took notes on, and I think they're invaluable, Professor Myhr. And that is, I've represent companies around the world, and you're right. In other words, I'll have a conversation with them at 11 o'clock at night or 4 in the morning, right? Just so we can make it work. But I don't have that option set up on a website page using Calendly, which I use also for my international clients. So we're going to be adding that. Not for U.S. clients, because I don't frankly want U.S. clients who can call me at 9 to 5 to reach out to me at 10, right? But if it's not an option and it's somebody in Europe, I want to make that blog, that page on my website available that allows them to schedule something that works for them, that allows me to close the deal. And I think other professionals out there may want to consider doing the same thing. The second thing that you talked about, the mastermind, you know, one of the ways that we've created a global referral base, and you'll appreciate this, is by connecting with people in different countries. For example, you know, Chrissy Lightfoot out of Leeds, England. And when our family was over there, and for those of you that don't know Chrissy, she's one of the most well-known female LinkedIn lawyers and robotics AI people on LinkedIn in the UK. When we had a family trip over there, we made sure to get together for lunch, right? Took the extra time to actually grab lunch together. And you're right, those types of relationships result in different opportunities, both personally and professionally. So I'm so glad that you brought those 2 factors up, because it's pretty easy to do. I mean, joining a mastermind that has a global reach on a topic that you're interested in. Maybe it's not even business. Maybe it's paddleboarding. Maybe it's hang gliding. Maybe it's mountain bike riding, right? But you're still connecting with people around the world that own companies. For example, if you're a lawyer who may need legal services in the United States. I just think that's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. No, but the other thing is it doesn't have to involve traveling to Singapore. It could also be local. I tell my students in class, especially when I teach international marketing, I have a lot of cases about marketing to Chinese, etc. But some students get very excited about it. And then I ask, how often do you speak to Chinese students on campus? And sometimes those bridges are so easy to just, you don't have to travel to China to talk to Chinese. You can talk to Chinese students next to you, and I try to mix up the groups and whatever, and just try to have the fun thing was when I'd had an MBA class with a role play, and I had Chinese delegation negotiating against a US delegation, and and then I made the Chinese students Americans, and the Americans, I made them Chinese. And first they had to study about what the cultural attributes are that should be different or likely have been found to be different. And the Chinese students said about the Americans, they really played Chinese very well. And I heard the opposite from the other side. And it was fun. It was sort of
it's that is so spot on. My son Garrett, and he did a trip through USC to Tokyo and some cities outside Tokyo through a student travel thing. But he came back with a whole new understanding and appreciation of that region of the world and doing business in that region of the world. But here's the thing. You walk around the USC campus when we had classes, which we're all online now, and I know you are too. And you're exactly right. He's basically rubbing elbows with a lot of friends that have the same, from that region of the world, who has business connections, experiences, and stories. You don't need to go to Tokyo. You don't need to go to Hong Kong to build these relationships, right?
No, it is. Yeah, first of all, Garrett, if you're listening, thanks for having listening to my broken English over the summer. Great intern, and good luck with the semester. But when it comes to getting out of your comfort zone, of course, traveling is going to allow for a richer experience. But sometimes people traveling are seeking out people that are just like them. And you have to break out of your bubbles. Find the filter bubbles you're living in on social media, in real life. And maybe go through your connection list on LinkedIn and Facebook once in a while and see, are there people there that you may have thought have died because they stopped popping up in your news feed? Well, maybe you don't see them because the algorithms have picked up that you never spent time reading their stories, you never clicked like, you never commented, you never shared the stuff, and they stopped showing it to you. Instead, you gravitated towards people. Sometimes students gravitate to those that look exactly like them, are exposed to the same news sources, are going to the same events, people that you meet for coffee at Starbucks anyway. Why should you spend your online time with them as well when we have this thing that is actually called the World Wide Web? Why should you just go local web? And so question, I'm not saying you should break up with your best friends, but maybe leave some space for people that you don't know so well yet. They could be your future good friends, or it could even be a valuable relationship, even if you never sort of become close buddies. It's not necessary to date or possible to be close buddies to everyone, but you can have meaningful relationships for sure with more.
I love that. I mean, back before the internet, we were getting our referrals from across the street. Now it's just as easy from someone on the other side of the planet to make a referral to our California firm premised upon what you just said. Let me just real quick, I just want to, I did notice this comment about a book, Social Media for Lawyers. Absolutely reach out to Professor Myhr or me if you want to talk about it or share some more ideas. That's a great topic, and we need as much help as we can get. Do you have a chance in the last 7 or 8 minutes, Professor Myhr, just to answer some quick questions?
Yes, absolutely.
And Periscope, we're pretty, I haven't been on Periscope in a while, but we're getting some feedback on Periscope. And okay, so the first, look at that setup. I love that. The first question that I just want to run by you is, if you had an opportunity right now to build out a TikTok platform, would you spend the time to do it?
It depends on what you mean by platform. When it comes to popular networks, I always recommend that personal brands and business brands go out and at least claim their user handle, because most of these networks is free and nobody else can squat on it and basically make it look bad. And maybe if you're in the marketing field, the communications field, it makes sense to dabble with it, or at least be a lurker to see what other people are doing, so that you, before you dismiss it, you at least know what you're dismissing and for what reasons. And then you have to pick your battles. I am often asked, how many social networks should you be on? And I think the argument that you should do one thing really well rather than many mediocre in a mediocre way, that argument doesn't hold anymore. You need to be on more than one platform, because not everyone is going to have your preferred platform as their preferred platform. On the other hand, you may not have an active platform presence on all networks, so pick your 3 or 4 favorites and maybe one primary channel. Some people break through by just going YouTube or just going LinkedIn or just focusing on one. But the danger with that strategy is that that network may go away. You might be hacked, and your account might be stolen, and the algorithm might start deprioritizing your network. So try to have at least a couple of places, and ideally get them to your network, your list, email list, or whatever that you can control. TikTok, I think it depends on your target market. I think it is true, though, that it is growing in terms of a maturity, not just because the users are getting older, but it's also going up in age in terms of the sweet spot. If you're targeting 50, 60-year-olds, TikTok doesn't matter much.
Yes, it does.
But,
yes, it does.
Yeah,
what are you talking
not
about?
much,
Have
yeah.
you not seen
Except,
my
yeah,
talk?
if you're targeting Mitch Jackson, yes.
All right, let me ask you. Let me ask you another quick question. I've got like 5 questions here I want to cover. So
Yeah.
so excuse me for interrupting you, but so this happens to be somebody in Legal Minds, and Dan, I'm going to get to your question in just a second. My mastermind we've set up on the Mighty Networks, which is a private platform, no advertising, invite only, none of this, none of the noise on social media. It's in a private network. What are your thoughts about more companies moving from Facebook groups over to private networks, for example, like Mighty Networks? Is that a trend, or is it, or not?
It is a little bit similar to if you look at retailing. Do you want to be on the market square where all the green stands and fruit sellers are, and they are there for a reason? That's where people go on Saturday morning to buy fruits and vegetables. Or are you going to try to hand out flyers, come to my street 4 blocks away, my store, retail store? If you can get them to your store, yes, that's fantastic. But before you have developed even the first following, it's going to be difficult to start there. But once you get people get used to your products and service, what makes you stand out, the more you differentiate yourself, make them fall in love with you, perhaps, then they're going to be much more likely to actually go through that inconvenience of going to your preferred platform of choice, even though it might require a new login or a new website to remember, a bookmark to. But if you become one of their preferred places, they're going to find you. But again, it might be difficult to start there. You have to look at, if you go to the public marketplace, you have to look at that as an opportunity to shine. And if you happen to sell to them on a more public place, see that as an opportunity to prove yourself, not treat them as a loyal customer until they don't ever take them for granted, but don't see them even as a loyal customer until you have done 2 sales, 3 sales, 5 sales. The software stack, that's a good question. Yeah.
Podcast question that I've just put up on the screen from Dan Jaffe out of Toronto, Canada, is what's your software stack to manage your social?
I think that, I'm using Agora Pulse, but I am dabbling and experimenting with several because as a professor, I don't necessarily want to just say that this is the one tool you should always use. So I have an account at Hootsuite. I have now just a free account at Buffer, but I try to be conversant in terms of social media management tools of various kinds and see. I used to pay for BuzzSumo to see the popularity of various topics and things, but that was very pricey. But then looking at I also dabble in the so-called native experience, which is logging into each network in its own right to see how is the interface looking like, trying it on mobile, trying it on the desktop, and see how does this play, and is it something that is workable? Partially just to see what are other people seeing when they do that, and also it increases the chance that you actually will authentically engage with people if you actually take some time to log into each network. Yes, you can lose time. It could be a rabbit hole, and all these time management books have chapter 1, turn off all your social media. But I usually say, go there in spurts. I have a chess clock. So I say this is so here's focus. So that could be writing, preparing a class. It could also be, I'm going to focus to go on Facebook and do that for X number of minutes and try to win the game on focus versus doing other stuff. So, and then turn it off when the time is up. And then if you log in natively, these tools like Agora Pulse and others, they're believed to be penalized if you post content from there to shoot it out across platforms without even logging in, even though the social media scientist Scott Ayers of Agora Pulse have done testing and seen that's not the case. But at least you can see how it shows up. The graphic looks nice, the pixelation, and you can actually have more control of the experience by logging in natively on each platform, and also make sure that you're more likely to provide the content in the format that is more natural. It's just like when you travel to Japan or to France or whatever, that how do people interact? What is the digital body language in the social platform example? How long should the text part be? How many hashtags should you use? What type of images, and not just the size of it, but what type of content is okay here, and what is, maybe you have the same original story, but you adapt it and massage it a little bit to make it fit into the flow of that platform.
So Dan mentions that I guess Agora Pulse is the first official hardware stack that he's seen, and we talked about it in Legal Minds. And just to give everybody an idea of what Professor Myhr is talking about. So the way I process this information is when I open my Google Chrome, automatically Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, all those tabs open up. And I'll check them natively. I'll go in and check them and kind of get a feel for what's going on each morning while I'm having my cup of coffee on my desktop or even on my phone. But then I use Agora Pulse to schedule and to actually check the inboxes. So personal messages on each of the platforms I mentioned all come into one page on Agora Pulse, which saves me a bunch of time. And all right, listen, we're at the top of the hour, and a final question, if you don't mind, and then we'll wrap this up, is moving forward over the next 12 to 18 months, is there any particular social media platform that you think we should be paying attention to from a business perspective? I know that's a broad question, but I'm going to let you take it anyway, because I know you can handle it.
Yeah. This is an easy question. Are you ready? It's the one platform, right? 2020 is finally the year of video, and just like 2019, 18, 17, 16, 15, etc.
Well done.
I think
well done, Professor.
I think it's worth reiterating, because I've been talking about video marketing for years, and most myself included, are still not taking it as seriously as it deserves, because you see the increased not just traction in terms of engagement, but also the richness of the communication media absent, especially now when you can not meet face to face, having this increased bandwidth of embracing somebody. It's inconvenient to actually be on video. Audio is easier. You don't have to use makeup. I didn't use much makeup, but you don't have to think about having Mitch's book in the bookshelf, etc. And text is sort of hiding a little bit more. But if you can do that on YouTube, it is, I think I've seen a trend where a lot of people were hiding their best stuff behind a paywall or a registration wall that you had to register before you could see much. Some people are throwing out on the blog, but now you see that people are giving away a lot of value on YouTube as well. And you can find a lot of things that that is going to help you a lot as a consumer and fixing things. But most people that might be your customer don't have time to consume random videos on YouTube, but they might find one of them there. And so if you blogged for years, maybe you can translate those blogs into current versions on YouTube and update the material. I think that will do you well for search and also trust.
Video. Yeah, you're right. We've been talking about video since day one, but it's still at the top of the list. And here's one of the other, I think, powerful aspects of video. Let me just share with this. Mm-hmm. Toronto, Canada, Georgia, okay, Scotland. Mm-hmm. I mean, on today's video, we've got people joining us from all over the world, and mm-hmm. What a great way to communicate. What a great way to share value. What a great way to have a conversation. And Professor Myhr, you know that it's also a great way for you and I to stay in touch. Even though we're both here in Orange County, we can't see each other like we mm-hmm. enjoy doing. And for our viewers who are watching mm-hmm. the live show tonight, the recorded show, or next week they're listening to the podcast mm-hmm. version of the show, which, by the way, you guys, with the right video platform, and we're using StreamYard tonight, and I'm not affiliated with StreamYard in any way, shape, or fashion. You can download the video, you can download the audio, and you can turn it into a podcast. So you can repurpose this content to get maximum impact around the world. If people want to connect with you, Professor Myhr, what's the best way for them to reach out and say hello?
Well, since people have difficulty spelling my last name, which should be easy, Myhr is actually like, imagine my HR. That's niklasmyhr.com is one, but thesocialmediaprofessor.com is easier to spell. Thesocialmediaprofessor.com, or just put in my last name and Chapman University. You will find a lot of things going on, and you will find one of the top business schools in California, if not nationwide. All right.
Oh, listen to this. I love that. I love it. So for those of you listening, it's Professor Niklas Myhr, NIKLASMYHR, MYHR. You guys type that into Google, and it's fun. You're going to love what comes up on the search engine results. Professor Myhr, as always, appreciate your time. I appreciate the wisdom and knowledge that you've shared with my audience tonight. And you know that I appreciate you as a human being. So thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Well, thank you.
Stay safe, okay?
And a final gift, maybe if with your permission, I give away a chapter on my book as a PDF.
Ball's in your court. What do you have in mind?
So if they go to tsmp.me, the social media professor, tsmp.me/Mitch.
Let me type that up.
tsmp.me/Mitch.
Is that?
And then I'm going to put up.
Is that it right there?
Yes. Give me 5 minutes. I'm going to put it up there, and you're going to have the chapter where I wrote how social media and my presence online helped me be found by the Prince of Monaco. All right. So if you want to find your prince.
If you want to find your prince, go to tsmp.me/Mitch. That's going to get us in trouble, Professor Myhr. Once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your expertise. And stay safe and make each day your masterpiece. Bye-bye, everybody.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Take care.